Hey, what's up, everybody? We're here for another awesome, fabulous episode of the Fandom Show. Today we are talking all about action figures. Action figures have in fact been around for almost 60 years now. The term was originally used by Hasbro in 1964 to market a line of G.I. Joe toys. They decided to go with action figure because they didn't want to call them dolls. The idea, of course, was, hey, let's figure out a way to get boys playing with dolls and we can make a lot more money selling toys. But they didn't want to call them dolls because, well, boys didn't play with dolls. So instead they called them action figures, but the funny thing was they were basically dolls for boys. The original G.I. Joe toys was a fixed action figure, but you could take off the clothing and put different uniforms and stuff on them, similar to, of course, a Barbie doll. And a lot of the early action figures were like that as well. The early Star Trek figures were like that. It wasn't until late 70s, early 80s that we got to the pre-molded plastic figures that most of us know today. Now, there was a series of superhero action figures, Marvel DC, in the early 1970s, and those are highly sought after today because at the time, the action figure market wasn't all that big, and so they didn't make these figures in large quantities. As such, the ones that are still around are rare and sell for quite a bit of money when they do show up. Now, the one thing that blew the action figure market wide open was, of course, Star Wars.
This is supposed to be Luke Skywalker. I don't think they quite got it right.
Of course, most of us are familiar with the story. George Lucas wanted the merchandising rights for Star Wars. The studio didn't think the movie was going to be any good, so they were like, yeah, take the merchandising rights, whatever, we don't care. Well, of course, those merchandising rights made George Lucas a very, very wealthy man, and one of the first things he did with those rights was to contract with a toy company and get some action figures made. But since they didn't know how popular Star Wars was going to be, they didn't really make that many of them. So few, in fact, that there were basically no Star Wars figures on the market the Christmas after the movie came out. It wasn't until that spring of 1978, when Star Wars action figures hit the market. The company who made them, Kenner, actually released these gift certificate things that parents could wrap up in a box on Christmas morning for the kids in 1977 to let them know, hey, you are getting Star Wars toys, they're just not here yet. And so with the success of Star Wars toys, especially the new smaller figures that were closer to about 4 inches tall, action figures absolutely exploded in the 1980s. We got Transformers, we got He-Man, we got WWF Wrestling, we got Ghostbusters, we got Batman, and we got the revamped G.I. Joe line that most 80s kids know and love.
Here's Zanzibar, the Dreadnought's pirate, meanest Dreadnought yet. You can't escape me, skip. Hope I didn't dirty your nice uniform, lady. Of G.I. Joe, Dreadnought's airskip comes with Zanzibar. Dreadnought's cycle and other figures sold separately.
Of course, most of those toy lines that I mentioned carried on through the 1990s. There were new ones that were added. For example, Power Rangers was very big in the 1990s, and then through into the 2000s, we saw the superhero movie boom, and we just got a flood of superhero action figures for Marvel and DC. In fact, these days you can get action figures for pretty much everything, including things that you wouldn't traditionally think would have action figures, like the TV show Friends, or The Office, things like that. So basically anything you might want, you can probably find it with a bit of effort. It's absolutely amazing how many figures are on the market these days. So now that that's out of the way, let's take a look at a couple of controversies pertaining to action figures.
Some fake action figures are hard to spot. Others, not so much.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about two main controversies. The first is the character variation controversy. And the way that works is, let's use Batman as an example. So you could have a Batman action figure line, and within that action figure line, you would have like half a dozen different Batman variations. So you would have, Nightwing Batman, Exosuit Batman, Silver Batman, Gold Batman, and I mean, you get the idea. Just all these different Batmans, and those happen for two reasons. Number one, it's an easy way for the toy companies to make more money off a property because they can use that same initial Batman mold, painted a bunch of different colors, and call it 6 different action figures. But for collectors, it's kind of annoying because basically you're paying for the same figure over and over again, and there's not a whole lot of variation there. So for those of us who want to get the whole set, then yeah, you've got to pay for each of the different figures. But if you just want a basic Batman figure, it can be annoying because you see all these different Batmans, and it's like, well, what Batman do I want? It's like, well, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick one. Like, what do you do? And it can also be frustrating for parents because, of course, you know how kids can be. They want that one particular type of Batman, not the 5 others that are on the shelf, just that one particular type of Batman. So that can certainly become a little aggravating for both shoppers and collectors. The other controversy is basically with re-releases. So in recent years, certain toy companies have re-released older toy lines. Some of the older Star Wars figures got re-released. I believe a couple of older Transformers figures got re-released, and there was also a classic re-release of some of the G.I. Joe toys. So for collectors, this is great because it gives them an opportunity to get their hands on things that they might have missed the first time around, and new variations of old things. So that's cool. What some people don't like about it is they think that re-releasing the figures devalues the original figures. I don't personally agree with that because you can look at an original figure and you can look at a newer version of it, like a re-release, and the packaging will be notably different. A true collector will be able to tell that they're not the same, and obviously there will be a different value attached to each. So I don't necessarily think that a re-release really kills the value of the older figures. There's obviously purists who do, and it's always going to be that way. I don't agree with it because I think an original line and a re-release can easily stand together as separate lines with separate values that are treated differently by a collector. So personally, I don't think that one's a huge problem, but other people do. So
They might look like the original figures, but in fact they were released only 2 years ago.
okay, so at this point, really quick, I want to make the distinction between an action figure and a figurine. I have a World of Nintendo Zelda figure here, and I also have a Dr. Peter Venkman Funko Pop. Neither of these are action figures, they're figurines, and the main difference is that a figurine is just a pre-molded figure that doesn't move. It's one shape, one design, one pose, and that's it. Now, it might have a little accessory to go with it, so like this Link has a shield, but the shield can clip onto his hand, and that's it. It just stays there. It doesn't do anything else. So these are mainly more so for display than for play. Yeah, I know, really bad rhyme, but it works, right? And not so much action figures, but they are fun to collect. They come in all sorts of different varieties, which is awesome. But again, these are figurines and not action figures. I just wanted to make that little distinction there.
And now back to our regularly scheduled episode.
So I figured we'd go ahead and end by covering some quick action figure facts. There are more than 1 million action figures on the market in just about any kind of property you could think of: superheroes, video games, movies, TV shows, literary characters, historical characters, anything you want you can get, including you. There are companies out there that custom make action figures, so if you've ever wanted an action figure of yourself, hey, you can actually get that. Not sure if it's something I'm ever going to do, but if you're interested, then it's very easy to get done. I don't know how much it costs, but not hard to find out. Another thing is that the largest collections of action figures have hundreds of thousands of figures in them. I believe there's a couple of people who have collections over 1 million, which is more than can fit in my studio here. It might be more than could even fit in my house. I don't think I would ever want a collection that big, but I definitely respect the people that have collected and organized and put together a collection that big, because that is a very, very impressive feat. So that wraps us up for action figures. Our next episode is going to be our Animal Crossing series, going back to that. I'm very excited about it. I hope you are too. As always, guys, thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.